Kevin, I will never quit. McCarthy has had quite enough and is leaving Congress. George Santos has returned to making stuff up in the private sector. Marjorie Taylor Greene is angry at everybody, but especially Republicans. Sean Hannity tried to get Donald Trump to say he wasn't going to be evil, but he just couldn't do it on account of how basically evil he is. Speaker Mike Johnson is pandering to insurrectionists because they're basically a major Republican constituency now. And for a guy who used to coach football, Tommy Tuberville doesn't seem to know the difference between a tie and a loss. Welcome back to the podcast that helps you, the 54% of the country that votes for progress in every election, convince your conservative friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, Kevin McCarthy is out. I mean, what a year for him. I mean, he was Speaker of the House not too long ago. Make sense of this math to me. What happens now?
Well, here's what stuck out to me about it is that he chose to announce that he was leaving in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, which I don't think is an op-ed. I think it's an ad. I think it's like, hey, it's like, hey, Wall Street, people who need a lobbyist, which I'm sure we will call a public affairs professional for the first 2 years, given the rules. Hey, private equity people who need someone to go around and raise funds, hedge fund managers, people like that. I'm leaving Congress, as you read in the Wall Street Journal, which I don't know how widely read the Wall Street Journal is in Bakersfield, where he's from, but I'm thinking that was not so much aimed at his longtime constituents. So yeah, I think the dude is like, this is terrible. Everyone here either hates me or treats me like a relic. There's no reason to stay, right? I mean, I can't think of what else this is.
Well, let's throw up on the screen. So from what I understand, if McCarthy resigns after Friday at 5 p.m., which is what's expected, then Newsom can choose either to call a special election or keep the seat vacant until the next election. I don't think it takes a genius to guess which of those two Newsom's going to do, given this is a safe Republican district. I'll quote Norm Ornstein, who said, with the Santos seat vacancy and now McCarthy, the House majority will be down to 2. Democrats need to be prepared to act swiftly and decisively if the numbers drop below 218, even if only for a day. Quick motion to vacate. Jeffries is Speaker. Immediate agenda.
I agree. Before we even go into that, just for fun, there's a clip that was texted to us by Jeremy and Salty, which is just fun. It's a little quick cut between two different McCarthys a few months apart. If they have that, let's get that one.
Remember, I will never give up. I care too much about this country.
28 past the hour, breaking news out of Capitol Hill. Just in the last few minutes, Congressman Kevin McCarthy, who previously served as House Speaker, has just penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying that he is leaving the House of Representatives at the end of this year.
Anyway, I forgot to go to that a minute ago, and I thought it was clever. And look, I mean, I guess because he says in his thing, he says, he's going to continue his fight from outside. But to your point, if he were really trying to continue the fight on behalf of the caucus and not kind of leave them in the lurch, he would leave now. But instead, he's going to leave them with a very slim majority here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an ultimate dick move. Like, he clearly is trying to stick it to his colleagues. Maybe there's some kind of pension thing going on here. I bet there could be something about serving another term or whatever. Maybe that's probably what's going on here. But I love the idea that he's sticking it to his colleagues. I mean, there's obviously a lot of bitterness here. We'll throw up on the screen. Marjorie Taylor Greene said the following. She said, and I don't completely understand everything going on here, but she says, well, now in 2024, we'll have a 1-seat majority in the House of Representatives. Congratulations, Freedom Caucus, for 1 and 105 rep who will expel our own for the other. I can assure you Republican voters didn't give us the majority to crash the ship. Hopefully no one dies. I really need an interpreter for some of this, but I think she's not in the Freedom Caucus.
No, she's mad at the Freedom, because remember, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
This is like talking to True after school about who's mad at who at the lunchroom. It's like really hard to keep track of what's going on here.
That's exactly it, because It's except it makes more sense when with them, with fourth graders, because she's not in the Freedom Caucus because she threw her lot in with McCarthy because she was like, hey, this is great, I'm going to get some power, and then that did not work out. She bet the wrong horse, and now she's mad at everybody. I don't know, man. It's Republicans in disarray, right? I mean, she's mad at everybody, and I guess I don't know what the I hope no one dies thing mean.
Well, it just means that if we were to do what Norm Ornstein said and get our couple of days in the sun, America will cease to exist. I imagine that's probably what they're thinking.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, I think that's
meanwhile.
I love the idea of her threatening her colleagues, which we'll get to. Is just there's continual violence amongst Republicans on the Hill in many different forms. Actually, we have multiple segments about Republican violence on the Hill today, so get excited, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess we're coming back to her, but I also think it's telling when it comes to McCarthy that if you look at like what Nancy Pelosi did, she was speaker, she was ousted by a change in partisan control, not by her own party, but she chose to stick around, and I assume that there are, first of all, she's like a emeritus speaker. She's able to do quite a lot. So it is a different situation. But I also figure if you're Nancy Pelosi or you're Kevin McCarthy, if you have had things that you really care about legislatively that you have wanted to lean into that you haven't always had a chance to because of your responsibilities and leadership, now would be the time to do that. So I do think, when you're talking to people about the Republicans in Congress and what their priorities are, I think yet another example of them not really wanting to accomplish anything is that as soon as Kevin McCarthy couldn't have the big whistle and be the line leader, he didn't want to go to school there anymore because he no longer felt that there was any reason to be there. And the truth is, like, you probably, being who you are and having the relationships you have, you probably could have got some good stuff done for your district. You probably could have maybe made some policy changes that wouldn't have been front page news, but would have mattered from your own ideological perspective. But he chose not to do that. And I think it shows a big difference between why Republicans choose, these Republican elected officials choose to be in government and why the Democrats do.
Yeah, what's interesting is like in parliamentary systems, it seems like people stick around more in part because like anything can happen. Like there's this shifting, constantly shifting coalitions. You think about like, we've talked a lot about Netanyahu or Ehud Barak, but if you look at what just happened in England, David Cameron had stepped down a long time ago. He then joined the House of Lords and now is the foreign secretary, even though he was prime minister before. So I think and obviously, I mean, that's weird. And we could do a whole segment, which nobody would listen to about
nobody would care.
Interesting about the House of Lords there, because that is an anomaly in its own right. But okay, wake back up, everybody. I'm here. So the let's talk. Should we move on from this? I think I don't really have much else to say. I mean, well, there's actually one interesting thing here, which is there are record numbers of people retiring from Congress on both chambers. And this is from the end of November from Axios. They said lawmakers are fleeing Congress at a record clip, with 13 senators and representatives announcing this month that they won't seek re-election, the highest number in more than a decade. And they actually talked about how most of the Republican retirements are in safe Republican districts amongst like quote unquote more establishment Republicans as they define it. And Democratic retirements are actually happening in more swing districts, which should be more concerning to Democrats. So that's not great.
No, it's not great. It also shouldn't be a surprise that people are leaving Congress. It's a terrible job. Like it's interesting because as somebody who people say all the time to me, aren't you going to run for something? And it's like, it depends on who you are, but at some level. Now, I don't think McCarthy plans to actually do something. I think McCarthy plans to make a lot of money, but that's based on nothing other than Kevin McCarthy. But I think that people who really do want to make a difference, there are so many different ways to do it outside of Congress, where you don't have to sit in endless committee hearings that often turn into just, dog and pony shows by people trying to show off where very little gets done. You don't have, flying back and forth from your district. So it is patriotic to do this job and to take it seriously. But it's not. I'm sure it's very exciting at first, but after a while, it's not a great job. And once you've established a platform to be able to go make a difference doing something else, I can see why people leave. It is, however, a big problem that it is people leaving on the Democratic side from more competitive districts. But honestly, I think that McCarthy wanted to leave. And to your point about a more parliamentary style system and all the upheaval that they've had over speakers, I think he hung around because he thought, I may end up back in the speaker's chair. And then when it became obvious that Johnson had the job and that he wasn't going to get back in the chair, he's like, out of here. There's no reason to stick around.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about the former president, Donald Trump, did a town hall with Sean Hannity. And boy, did he say something fascinating. Let's go to this clip.
I want to be very, very clear on this. To be clear, do you in any way have any plans whatsoever, if reelected president, to abuse power, to break the law, to use the government to go after people?
You mean like they're using right now? So, in the history of our country, what's happened to us, again, has never happened before. Over nonsense, over nothing, made up charges. I often say Al Capone, he was one of the greatest of all time, if you like criminals. He was a mob boss, the likes of which Scarface, they call him. And he got indicted once. I got indicted 4 times.
I want to go back to this one issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you.
Yeah.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border, and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm
gonna be, he keeps, you're not gonna be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
It's kind of like that.
Believe him.
We talked about this. Remember the answer we talked about, and Donald Trump doesn't do it. He had previous interview members.
All right, we're good there.
Well, one interesting thing, Al Capone, the greatest of all time, pause. If you like criminals. If you like criminals, I think he is like, well, I mean, we could spend the whole time talking about that. I mean, clearly somebody likes criminals on that stage, but yeah, I think this is, I don't know what else to say. I mean, we've talked a lot about Biden. Everybody's talking a lot about Biden. Trump in plain sight is saying he's going to be a dictator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. On the Al Capone thing, it's important to remember that Donald Trump is not a politician. He's an organized crime boss. And that's who he looks up to. It's always who he's looked up to. And it's always how he's acted. So when you're talking about this coming presidential election and you want to bring up Kushner enriching himself and you want to bring up how Trump hired a bunch of people and the nepotism of it, don't talk about it like it's political corruption. It's not political corruption. It's organized crime. That's why it's being prosecuted as organized crime, particularly in Georgia. It's why he himself is placing himself in that context. He himself is saying, look at me, I got indicted more times than Al Capone. I guarantee you that he grew up, watching those kinds of movies. And also, by the way, it's pretty well known at this point that those are the folks he was consorting with coming up. The only reason that he's actually finally caught some indictments is that he's risen to a level where it was so consequential that he had to be indicted. He was clearly breaking the law for years in an organized way in New York. So one, he's a gangster, not a politician, not a president. That's how he should be talked about. Two, his whole strategy here is muddy the waters, right? And that when he talks about Biden being corrupt, when he talks about what they did to us, Biden didn't do nothing to him. I mean, the dude went out and broke a bunch of laws, and now he's being prosecuted by a lot of different people who don't report to Biden. And so I think it's important to understand that what he's trying to do is he wants people who are persuadable to be persuaded that they're both organized crime bosses, that all of America, and that's people who are vulnerable to being persuaded to go with Trump. Persuadable, Trump curious voters are the kind of people who are going to say things to you like both sides are bad. I don't like either one. All politicians are corrupt. So he's just trying to drive that home so that then when it comes to actually vote, some of those people, for a variety of reasons, maybe they don't like being told that they have to watch the way they use pronouns. Maybe they don't like who knows what. Maybe they want their taxes to be lower. Who knows what it is? Or maybe they just want to be entertained. Or more than likely, it's just that most of their friends are Republicans because they live in parts of the country where most of their friends are Republicans. Those are the people he wants to persuade, and he wants to persuade them by having them say, it doesn't really make a difference who is actually president, so I can just vote for Trump. And that's what that's about.
Well, he's definitely pushed that narrative over the weekend in a different appearance. He has been leaning into this let's muddy the waters and accuse my opponent of exactly what I've been doing. Let's go to this clip. Okay.
We don't have it. Okay. I'll act it out. It's Maggie Haberman, right? The Maggie Haberman clip where she is saying, now we got an, we have it. All right, here we go. I won't have to act it out.
Yep. So what Haberman was reacting to in CNN was this appearance that Trump made where he is accusing Biden of being a threat to democracy. He's saying that Biden is determined to destroy democracy. This is what Trump said, quote, he's been weaponizing government against his political opponents like a third world tyrant. Biden and his radical left allies like to pose as standing up as allies of democracy. But Joe Biden is not the defender of American democracy. Joe Biden is the destroyer of American democracy. So basically he's saying, like, I know you are, but what am I? Essentially politics. And so this is his strategy, right? You're a crook. And I don't think he's going to convince people he's not a crook, right?
Right.
He's just trying to convince people that, like you're saying, like they both are. So I'm just going to go with whoever keeps my taxes lowest.
Well, and the point Maggie Haberman is making that is so frightening is that, he would be coming in with a Congress that is entirely weakened, right? Because you don't have his critics on the Republican side there anymore. He'd be coming in with people who now this time around know how government works and know how to do all the terrible things they want to do. It reminds me of, you remember that movie Armageddon where they're briefing the oil drillers like Bruce Willis and all those guys and Owen Wilson, and they're briefing them on what it's going to be like on the asteroid. And they get done, and then Owen Wilson says, so the most horrifying thing we can possibly imagine. Why don't you just say that? Just say the most horrifying thing we can possibly imagine. And that's what that reminded me of. And what it makes me worry about is what is the very evident enthusiasm gap. When you look at the polling for Biden right now, it is not so much that people are who weren't for Trump before are becoming persuaded to be for Trump. There is a small element of that, but I think what is much more of a problem is the enthusiasm from the traditional Biden coalition is just not there. And I think if we're going to be realistic, it's probably not going to be generated in whole by getting people excited about someone, Joe Biden, who has been a part of our political life since the 80s. He's our national political life since the 80s. That's probably not what's going to do it. So it is going to be a matter of making sure people understand what the dangerous alternative is. And, the fact that the other day his CIA, the guy who everybody believes would be his CIA director, was on Steve Bannon's podcast and talked about how, we're going to use the government to go after everybody. We're going to sue people, including journalists. We will put people in jail. And this is, by the way, the guy who would be in charge of the CIA, not even domestic corruption at the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover style. We're talking about a guy who would be in charge of our foreign intelligence agency, our central foreign intelligence agency that's not supposed to operate in the United States, talking that way. And that's what we have to make people aware of. But at the same time, I don't feel like our listeners should feel obligated to listen to every word that Trump says, because it's so bad for your mental health. I was actually, when I was preparing for this pod about an hour ago, Diana came in and she just heard the very tail end of that clip, the first clip of Trump talking as I was listening to it. And she said, "You want to know something interesting?" She said, "I think I have gone 12 consecutive months without hearing Donald Trump's voice." And, my wife is a person who seems to be in very good mental health. So there's clearly a correlation between those two things.
Occupational hazard, Jason.
Occupational hazard.
We do that for you, listeners. We listen.
That's right.
So you only have to get the poisons in the doses, they say, and we give you just enough to keep you alive. Okay. Trump is definitely wearing off on a lot of these sort of up and comers in Congress. We're going to talk when we get back from the break about how the speaker is essentially covering for insurrectionists. We're also going to talk about some GOP on GOP violence. Those are actually two different points about what's happening on Capitol Hill. Of course, we'll have to talk about Santos. And we'll maybe mix in a little Bob Menendez and Tommy Tuberville as well. So we've got a sordid cast of characters when we come back from the break. This episode is sponsored by Rhone. If you're like me, you understand the pains of finding what to wear. Most clothes are uncomfortable. They may be too tight. They never, actually fit your size because, a lot of us are not exactly small, medium, large, extra large. We're complicated. Sometimes when you find something you like, you can only wear it for a few hours before that important meeting or dinner, and then you have to change it into something else. And everyone wants to dress their best. You want to look good at all times. And frankly, it's a confidence booster. So here's the deal. Men's closets were due for a radical reinvention, and Rhone stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man, and here's why. Rhone helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, which offers the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Rhone commuter collection. And here's some anecdote. I'm wearing my Rhone pants right now. And last week I was at a wedding. I wore my Rhone button-down shirt to the wedding at a formal wedding, and I will also wear it tomorrow when I just go into a coffee shop to have a meeting. It's that versatile. So it's time to feel confident without the hassle with Rhone's wrinkle release technology. Wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy. Yeah, I actually not so neatly folded that shirt in my bag for the wedding, and I was able to take it out, and automatically I was able to put it on. It looked like I had ironed it, but I didn't. It's an inside secret between us. So with Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll also be smelling fresh and clean all day. On top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can dish the dry cleaner all together. We're on the move a lot, and the Rhone commuter collection has never let me down. The versatility and overall comfort of the collection is undefeated. I absolutely love it. And even after I wear it all day, I feel super fresh because that Gold Fusion anti-odor technology. At that wedding, I was dancing up a storm, wore it, no problems. So the commuter collection can get you through any work day and straight into whatever comes next. So head to Rhone.com/majority and use the promo code majority to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/majority and use the code majority. It's time to find your corner office comfort.
If you're like my wife, Diana, morning coffee is non-negotiable, but she was tired of waiting in line for an overpriced cup or settling for gritty, bitter coffee at home, and now she switched to using AeroPress, and I don't think she's ever going back. It's so easy and convenient and incredibly unique. She said to me the other day, she was like, "I didn't know we could do this at home. This is awesome. Saves her a bunch of time in the morning." AeroPress is like a French press, only it's better. It's the only press that uses a patented 3-in-1 brew technology, combining the best of several brew methods into one portable device for a completely unique and delicious flavor profile. Smooth, rich, and full-bodied without the bitterness and grit found in other presses. And as a bonus, AeroPress can brew thousands of recipes. AeroPress travels better than others too. It's compact and incredibly durable. That means that you'll never have to endure terrible coffee at the hotel, on the job, or on an adventure again. It brews and cleans in less than 2 minutes. You just add medium fine coffee grounds, pour in hot water, stir for 5 seconds, brew for 30 seconds. Then you press it into your favorite mug and enjoy. There's a reason why AeroPress is the barista's favorite home brewing tool. AeroPress is the best reviewed coffee press on the planet with more than 55,000 five-star reviews. Thoughtful, proven, and under $50, AeroPress is the perfect gift or stocking stuffer for every coffee lover in your life this holiday season. Don't settle for less than the best. They'll love it. AeroPress is shockingly affordable, less than $50, and we've got an incredible offer for our audience. Visit aeropress.com/majority. That's AEROPRESS.com/majority and save up to 20%. That's aeropress.com/majority to save up to 20%. It's time to ditch the drive-through, toss the French press, and say yes to better mornings fueled by better coffee. AeroPress ships to the U.S. and over 60 countries around the world, and we thank AeroPress for sponsoring our show.
Well, Jason, the Speaker of the House has made more news this week when he was talking about footage of the January 6th rioters. Let's go to this clip.
I want to be
through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems.
Okay, so I saw this and then I posted on social media this analogy, which my analogy was, it's like the FBI comes in and they say to a bank manager who's just been robbed, do you have surveillance video? And they're like, yes. And they're like, can we see it? And the bank manager is like, well, yes, but first we have to blur the faces because we wouldn't want anyone to get in any trouble. and I thought this was funny. The thing is, I put it on Twitter, which is, Twitter now is built to take things that I say and immediately put them in front of people with blue check marks who hate people like you and me and just be like, doesn't this make you mad? So now I've been inundated for the last 12 hours by people being like, don't you know that the FBI has all this footage and don't you, and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that was a joke, first of all. But second of all, it's a good point. I'm sure the FBI does have most of this footage, which means him saying that, if it's truly meaningless, is just the Speaker of the House, which I think when you're talking about extremism with people, it's important to bring out. It's the Speaker of the House feeling that he must give a verbal nod, pretty frequently to people who support insurrection against the United States of America. That means that is becoming an increasingly important voting block for them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that. I think he's clearly pandering. And
yeah,
this is where we are. And I think if you take this with the retirements, not necessarily McCarthy retirements, but the fact that, if what Axios is saying is correct, which is more quote unquote establishment Republicans are retiring, the sense that I'm getting from reading these accounts is that they're likely to be replaced by even more extreme Republicans. And so his base, being his members, want to hear this kind of stuff. And I don't know what else there is to say about it. I mean, obviously the prosecutors are doing their work. They have charged so many people. So many people have been convicted or pled guilty at this point. The numbers are staggering. And so we just have to continue to allow the Justice Department to do its work. And this is why winning the presidency in 2024 is so critical. Obviously, there will be a wave of pardons of these people if Trump is back in the White House.
Oh, like all of them. They will all be pardoned. And that's why anytime you're talking about the coming election, it's got to be about preserving democracy. You have to focus on the extremism, and within that is issues like abortion, policy issues. But also at this point, you can point to any mainstream Republican figure who holds actual power in the party, and you have examples like this. It's not like when they try to, paint us as extremists, and they have to go to the outer edges of the left in order to do that, and then say, well, look, your person didn't condemn it. It's like, no, the leaders of their party are the ones saying the things that need to be condemned. So you can go straight to the source.
Well, okay, should we talk about Tommy Tuberville really quickly here? Explain to me what I don't think I fully understood this. So he has been holding up military appointments because of his abortion position. Is that right? Is that the best summary of this?
Yeah, it has evolved over time. So basically, when for somebody to move up as a general in certain billets, in certain spots in the military, it has to actually come with approval by the Senate, right? But for certain positions. But what that means is that when they don't get that approval, and when it gets held up, that holds up the ranks behind them, because the people in line behind them can't get promoted, can't move to another duty station, can't any of those things until that position is filled. So it's left major positions unfilled. It's left like branch chief positions, like literally generals in charge of entire services, like the chief of staff of the army, positions like that, where you'll have one guy trying to do major jobs. And Tuberville has held that stuff up, and it started with him saying that it was because he didn't like the policy that the Pentagon had, that was basically saying that if a female service member needed reproductive services, if they needed to get an abortion, and the state that they were stationed in wouldn't provide it, that they would cover the cost of them going to get that medical care. And he found that to be terrible. So he was like, I'm not going to promote anybody until they change this. The thing is, a lot of those policies weren't made by the positions that he was holding up. But either way, he did this while claiming over and over again that our military is not strong enough, while he was actively weakening our military by not allowing these major positions to get promoted. And what it really goes back to is this Republican belief that anybody who's any good at what they do must be in the private sector. For all their talk of, we're very pro-military and that kind of thing. Look, listen to the way Trump talks about the generals. Listen to the way Tuberville, was being so dismissive of them. They just believe that, like, when you look at a 2-star general, 3-star general, I think Tommy Tuberville figures if that guy was really any good, or that gal was any really good, they'd be at a corporation, because those are the people that they respect. And so they think it doesn't matter who's in these leadership positions. So this went on for a long time. The military was being very plain that it was really hurting the readiness of the military. Tuberville started changing his tune to say it wasn't just about abortion, but really it's about wokeness in the military. And then finally, I think he just got embarrassed because he got himself into a situation where he couldn't get himself out, and he finally just gave up, and they worked around him on the rules, and he just gave up. Other than he's keeping a hold on four 4-star generals, which he likes to say, I still have a hold on some 4-star generals, which I think makes him feel like a big man. My favorite part of all of this is that he is claiming that we now have the weakest military that we've had in forever, which I'm not sure how Tommy Tuberville, who's never been in the military and just got into politics and didn't used to vote, really knows that. But okay, other than I think he's fallen for all this crap about wokeness, and because let's watch this clip.
Senator Tuberville,
yes.
Do you have any regrets that you didn't achieve exactly what you set out to do, that the policy is still in place?
It was pretty much a draw. I mean, they didn't get what they wanted, we didn't get what we wanted, and when they change the rules, it's hard to win. And so they changed the NDAA rules. We didn't get to fight for it to leave it in the Senate, and so just unfortunate the American people didn't get a voice.
Do you mind just stating what you said off camera real quick? Just what's happening?
What just
All right, that's good.
Yeah, just
we're good. So,
I'm relieved.
This is Tuberville, former football coach, not understanding that he lost badly, right? So that's clip number 1. Clip number 2 is where he gets into, I think we have it, let's see, where he gets into talking about the diversity funding and how upset he is that there's training for diversity going on in the military, which is his reason for why he says the military is so weak. So let's hear that one.
Well, as you just said, Eric, $114 million on diversity training. You got to be kidding me. We've got the weakest military that we've had in probably you're in my lifetime. Now, we've got a lot of good military people, but infiltrating our military is all this wokeness, and it's coming from the top, coming from Joe Biden, coming from Secretary of Defense Austin. It's coming from Milley, who is recently gone, but it's a.
So this is the same dude who, if you recall, wouldn't actually say that it would be bad to have white supremacists in the military. He was like, I don't even know what that is. That wouldn't be bad. And now he says that, diversity training and wokeness is infiltrating the military. Okay. First of all, this is going to come up for a lot of people, particularly people who, are from the Midwest and the South. You're going to, your holiday dinner. The military is getting weak stuff is going to come up. I know it is because I hear it around here. And the idea that having diversity training in the military, which is an increasingly diverse workforce, is a bad idea, is pretty antithetical to the fact that we have a huge recruiting problem. And if you want to recruit more people, and as America gets more and more diverse, you need to make it a more and more welcoming place to actually work. That's part number one. Part number two is this reminds me of a conversation that I had recently with a guy. I was actually at a kids sports activity and just got to talking to this guy who, based on his t-shirt, I knew was an Afghan vet. And we started talking. It turns out he's currently an active duty recruiter. And I'm asking him, well, so what do you think is up with the recruiting problem? Like, what are you hearing most? And he was like, well, and this guy is not political at all. And also, by the way, didn't know who I was. So he was not like, that was not the context. And he said, well, what they say most often is Biden. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, well, like people I'm trying to recruit, they'll say, well, I don't want to be in when Biden's in charge. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of let that sit for a minute. And then I was like, do you believe him? And this guy is like an Afghan vet. I think he was a sergeant first class. From the tone of the conversation, he didn't sound like he voted for Biden, but he goes, no, not at all. And I was like, well, what do you think it is? And he goes, well, I mean, a lot of these people I tried to recruit when Trump was president and they just didn't join. He was like, I think that they just don't want to work hard. I think they just don't want to be in the army right now. And he's like, and they just hear on talk radio, well, Biden is this, Biden is that. And they think it sounds cooler and like more macho to say Biden's the reason I don't want to join. I was like, what do you think is the real reason they don't want to join? He goes, I think it's because they just watched us be at war for 20 years. And the job market is really good. and we're just competing against a really, really robust civilian job market. And people are like, wait a minute, I've just watched us like go to war for 2 consecutive decades. I think I'm just going to go get a job that pays well and doesn't send me to war. So my point is, Tommy Tuberville is just one of these dudes who's acting like he's pro-America and pro-military, but really he just doesn't want to work hard. Like he's like a lot of these other folks.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly didn't acquit himself well when he was the coach of Auburn, but we won't go into that. Which is his claim to fame is that he was a football coach who actually somehow managed to take a amazing SEC powerhouse and run it into the ground. Okay, we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors. When we come back, we're going to go back to Capitol Hill, where there's just continues to be, a fisticuffs, I guess is the only way to put it. Maybe an exaggeration, but we'll talk about it when we come back.
Everybody knows that wine is the go-to gift for the holidays, but being in the grocery stores during the holidays is like being stuck in a maze. And don't get me started on the wine aisle. Between the people crowding the aisle, the giant selection, and my extremely limited knowledge of wine, I always end up just finding something that has like a 92-point deal on it and then running to the checkout. But with First Leaf, they take the stress out of finding new wine. First Leaf is the wine club that sends me a personalized shipment of bottles that are based on my unique palate right to my door. All I have to do is go to First Leaf's website, answer a few questions about my likes and my dislikes, and their expert team will select a customized assortment of world-class wines based on my preferences. And after I've tried each wine, I can rate them so that First Leaf can send me more wines based on my feedback. This is great because it means I don't have to say, I like this kind of tannin. I don't even know what a tannin is. I don't have to have any wine terminology in order to do this. I'm just like, this one tasted good. This one didn't taste as good. And eventually I know what kind of wine I like. Plus, all First Leaf wine is priced 30% lower than what you'd pay at a wine store. And every selection is backed by First Leaf's 100% satisfaction guarantee. I've already received a bunch of different wine shipments from First Leaf, and each one has been better than the next because that's like how the system works. From my Merlot to my Pinot Noir, First Leaf makes it easy while their personalized shipments perfectly capture my favorite components of each variety. Find the wine you'll love this holiday season with First Leaf. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/majority to sign up, and you'll get your first 6 hand-curated bottles for just $44.95. That's tryfirstleaf.com. That's tryfirstleaf.com/majority. Tryfirstleaf.com/majority. Heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family that you want to be able to spend as much time with as possible, is so important. We could all benefit from heart healthy energy. One of the best ways to get some, by supporting your blood pressure and your circulation. I'm 42 now. These are the kind of things that I think about now. Super Beets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure. They're plant-based and they're stimulant-free, so you get a green boost without the jitters. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. Super Beets Heart Chews are incredibly delicious. Seriously, they taste, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the brand name they taste like, but that's what they taste like. It's a good brand name. It's something you grew up with. And so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my Super Beets Heart Chews each morning, and it's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my Super Beets Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy. I'm ready to take on the day. It's the #1 doctor, pharmacist, and cardiologist, most importantly, recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation, so you not only get blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential, that sounds pretty good, with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code MAJORITY. That's getsuperbeets, BEETS.com, code MAJORITY.
All right, Jason. Well, more drama on Capitol Hill. The Marjorie Taylor Greene has accused one of her colleagues, Georgia Representative Richard McCormick, of putting his hands on her. It's not totally clear what happened here, but apparently they were in a disagreement over the Santos expulsion. And he put his hands on her shoulders and shook her and said he wanted to at least have an honest conversation with her. This is according to 2 people who saw it. And she is painting it as an assault. I don't know. What are we supposed to make of this? Or do we want to make anything of it?
So rather than get into crazy person said, what I would focus on is what it is they're interested in, because what this fight or disagreement or whatever it is was over, which is that this other guy, whatever his name is, had a resolution censoring Representative Rashida Tlaib, which I think is how you pronounce her name, I'm not sure, for some comments she made about the conflict in Israel and in Gaza. And Marjorie Taylor Greene had a much more far-reaching censure of her in her resolution, and hers was so strong that it got voted down by the majority, including a lot of Republicans. And then they put this guy's forward, and it won. It was voted. They passed the resolution, and that's what they were fighting about, right? And which, okay, you can have that view, you can feel strongly, and probably a lot of people listening to this feel strongly that censor should or should not have happened. It's not what we're here to discuss. The point is, they have the majority, and this is the kind of thing about which they have so much passion. This sort of not even the argument over whether or not she should be censured, but really the argument over who should get credit for her being censured. That's what the people who are the most high profile in Congress, in the majority party, are spending the greatest amount of their energy on.
Well, let's move to one last scandal on the Hill. Santos is officially out. There will be a special election in February to fill that seat. That actually could be a pickup. That is a seat that Democrats could win. And John Fetterman took the opportunity. Apparently, people are going to Cameo now and hiring George Santos to send messages to their friends. This is what Fetterman sent to or had made for New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez.
Hey, Bobby. Look, I don't think I need to tell you, but these people that want to make you get in trouble and want to kick you out and make you run away, you make them put up or shut up. You stand your ground, sir, and don't get bogged down by all the haters out there. Stay strong. Merry Christmas.
Pretty clever, I think. Apparently, Santos is making quite a lot of money doing this.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who've been into it. Yeah.
Really? Before we get into the, because I want to hear, as a New York person, I want to hear your thoughts on this race. Before we get into that, the one point I wanted to make that I think is kind of interesting that people can bring up when they compare the politicians in both parties is a guy like John Fetterman. So yeah, it's like clever and funny what Fetterman did, but the other thing at the heart of it is this is Fetterman trying to pressure one of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate, and this ain't like the House, you know. I mean, there's less than 50 people in the caucus, right? Or there's 50 people in the caucus, and so as a result, like it's kind of a big deal. I've talked on this show before about what close quarters these senators spend time in together, and that Fetterman is out there like campaigning to make Bob Menendez leave. And also like Fetterman, who's one of the more higher profile members of our party now, is also a guy who has done things like he was a Sanders guy, he was a Bernie guy, but he's also become, no matter what your opinion on it, very pro-Israel. Like in the clip where he talks about doing this, there's a giant Israeli flag behind him. So my point simply is that when you're talking to people that you want to persuade, I think it's interesting that from a dogmatic or like perspective, the higher profile members in our party seem to get a little more rein to take positions that, you know, cut against the course of the caucus. And I think that that's interesting. It should be celebrated and pointed out.
Yeah, I'm just with him. I don't know why Menendez is still in the Senate. I think he's a national security risk based on the allegations that are out there. And this is, as we've talked about, this is the second time. And I think I can't remember exactly. I think it was a hung jury the first time. I think we discussed.
I think so.
And he celebrated that, like, you know, he's like the Central Park Five or something. Like, so it's like, you know, I'm just not here for Bob Menendez. And there are plenty of great people coming up behind him in New Jersey, so he should get out of the way. Okay, with that moment of zen, what's our grab and or for that? Well, actually, we'll talk about the one for us really quickly. We're going to do a special episode on Friday with our best ofs for the year, like things that we loved this year, both in and outside of politics, and then looking ahead for predictions for next year. So we'll reserve our sort of personal talk for that. Yeah, grab and or. What do you got?
Well, I wanted to respond to a listener who is, I think, sort of urging us to continue to stay in touch and stay the course with the founding mission, as it were, of this show. And so we heard from this listener. It is Joe, and Joe said, "Hi, Jason. First off," he said some nice things. He said, I just want to say that I appreciate the Majority 54 podcast. And he said, since the beginning of the Trump nightmare, it's been hard to find solutions and how to combat it. Your podcast is one of the few that addresses that. Maybe it's just me, but I've noticed that there's been less time dedicated to addressing what we should say. Your example, and meaning what the listeners should say to people in their lives who they're trying to persuade. And he said, your example of the youth baseball parent that may vote for Trump was a good opportunity to instruct on how we may frame a dialogue. You're really good about saying, focus on this, don't focus on specifics or whatever it may be. And then he suggests some sort of role playing or, going back to the idea of like, you, Ravi, talking about your experiences with your dad. He says he lives in Wisconsin, and so this kind of thing is really, really needed. And so I just wanted to take this moment to sort of recommit ourselves. Hopefully people could hear it through this episode that I was doing that, to making sure that this show is a service and that we are helping people, particularly as we approach the holidays and folks are going to have these conversations, making sure that they are equipped to have these conversations and sort of be that leading edge of making the case. So
love it.
And then one other little grab and or thing is this was Diana's idea, encourage people, because we always in the show talking about the importance of using your platform. I'd like to encourage listeners and viewers to nominate to us people who they know of. Maybe they have news articles they could link to, whatever it is, or just anecdotes they want to share. People who are using their platform well. It doesn't have to be people who are known, who are really well known. It could just be somebody in your community who is using whatever platform they have, even if they're having to create one in order to advance a cause that you feel is really important, that we should maybe highlight. And to send us an email about it, you can just go to jasonkander.com and you can click on contact, and it goes straight to an email address for me. And that's what Joe did. And we'll maybe read some of those on air, and you can nominate people for us to highlight. And then before we get for one for us, my last thing is, we're coming up on the holidays, and I'm going to shamelessly plug my book, which is now in paperback. It's Invisible Storm, A Soldier's Memoir of Politics and PTSD. If you're one of the tens of thousands of new listeners or viewers who we have acquired over the last few months, that's my book, and it's a New York Times bestseller, and it's pretty good, and it's be a pretty good gift. So please go ahead and get it now. Thanks, man. Okay, one for us. So what's going on with you?
Oh, I thought we were gonna skip it to do Friday, but okay. I was telling you this offline. I mean, this is like, I was telling you offline, I'm barreling down 11 days to this powerlifting competition, and I've dropped 5 pounds in essentially a week, while also getting stronger, which has been a fun exercise of just eating lots of protein and essentially nothing else, and starving myself. So yes, you should be very concerned. You don't have to send me at messages. It will be over very soon. But I just like I like seeing what can happen. You know, testing things out, and I'm in a cranky low calorie mode right now. So I'm glad I'm not seeing too many people I know.
It's going to make for some great Instagram content. First of all,
as always.
You're going to, as by the very nature of what you're having to do, you're going to be particularly shredded, even more so than usual. So that's the reason people go to Robbie's Instagram. And also, you know, I am forever an endorser of people never stopping competing at things as if they are professionals at it, no matter your age. So I think it's awesome. My quick one for us is Ravi, as you know, one of my heroes since childhood is George Brett, the Hall of Fame, the only Hall of Famer from the Kansas City Royals, who is now 70 years old, and who I've met presidents, I've met rock stars and movie stars, and I don't really get starstruck. But even at 42 years old, I get nervous when I'm around George Brett, and the fact that George Brett sees me at a reception on Monday night and goes, "Jason, how you doing?" is unreal to me.
You and I've discussed this. He is the subject of one of the great internet videos that we won't talk about it today, but it's one of the great videos of all time.
Well, and if people want to see it, they can tune in on Thursday night. So tomorrow night, if you're listening to this live, and you know, so Thursday night, tomorrow night, the 7th, on MLB Network, there's a documentary called Brett, which is debuting. And I know this because I was at the premiere. I had the privilege, thanks to my friend Jin Wong.
Show the clip?
It's in the documentary. The documentary is fantastic, and so George Brett, sort of for friends and family, hosted a debut of it at Union Station's movie theater here in Kansas City on Monday night. And dude, like, it's amazing, but also just for me personally to show up and have like George Brett and some of his, you know, Royal teammates from the 85 team all be like, "Jason," is explaining that to the child in me, or to the 42-year-old version of me who plays men's league baseball, wears George Brett's number, and wears my socks really high because that's what George Brett did, because I've done that my whole life. My kid wears his socks high for that reason. You know, it's just one of those cool things that the way baseball can make you feel like a little kid, no matter how old you are, is kind of special. So,
well, amazing.
All right.
Well, actually, one other quick thing I forgot to mention. This is I interview. What do we air this on Wednesdays? So tomorrow, for those of you who are doing on the podcast, on the Lost Debate feed for the Lost Debate podcast, I interviewed this woman named Bethany McLean, who, if you remember, wrote the book on Enron, the smartest guys in the room. She wrote this book about the healthcare system, and it may be my favorite interview of the year. Essentially, like, what's wrong with the American healthcare system. I think our listeners in particular will enjoy it, because we get really deep into what makes us uniquely expensive and of poor quality relative to other developed countries. And I think it's something our audience would really love. I think it's probably my favorite episode of the year.
I have been listening to the Lost Debate a lot lately. So I fully endorse it. And then the last thing is, as you mentioned, This Friday, we'll have a special bonus episode that's just sort of best of the year, going through categories. So people should tune in for that. All right. Remember to subscribe to Majority 54 wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Just search Majority 54 and please leave a 5-star review. You can find Ravi on social media at Ravi M. Gupta, which should be really good coming up soon, and me at Jason Kander. Thank you to the Meidas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.